Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf and happy Mother's Day. I hope you're all having a wonderful Mother's Day and celebrating, whether you're an actual literal mom, a biological mom, a spiritual mom. There's so many ways to be a mom in this world. They don't all have to be biological. And we owe the people who nurture us everything. So I hope you're having a wonderful time and telling that special mom-like person in your life how amazing she or they are. So moving right in, some might say paradoxically, some might say appropriately, to this really quite extraordinary bill that's been passed in Georgia. It's called colloquially the Heartbeat Bill. Welcome. I'm really glad to see everybody. And Charles Pixley, if you're out there, thank you for your great suggestion of our consistently holding these talks every Sunday at the same time. It's a great idea and we're implementing it. And thank you also, all of you who have become Daily Clout members over the last week. We cannot survive without you. So please, everyone who isn't a member, it's $3.99 a month. We try to keep it as affordable as possible, but we need to keep our doors open, our data flowing, our researchers researching, our graphics designers designing, and we need to bring you these bills and these exposés of what's really going on in Washington and in the state houses every week, and we need your support to do so. All right. So please help us and become a member, or go to Patreon and give us a one-time gift, please. Got to get that out of the way, and now we can dive right in. So this bill is one of those really interesting bills that both the left and the right have jumped on and in many ways lied about. I'll just say it straight up. Those of you who follow us every week know that this happens quite a lot, and they're counting on you not to read the bill and to fall for their spin. So I'll tell you, the bill was signed into law. It is now the law of the land in Georgia. Governor Brian Kemp signed it into law, and it becomes the law of the land if it survives unchallenged in January of next year. So this is a real prospect unless it's overturned on appeal. So the left, predictably, both of them are predictable, says that this law criminalizes miscarriage. It also has been really going very viral and making claims that actually we'll see are not true. I mean, I hate to be that person, but they're just literally not true. So the Heartbeat Bill does indeed, as critics have pointed out, move criminality or actionable intent or actionable action, illegal action, to much earlier than it had been. The criminalization of abortion used to start at 20 weeks, or laws restricting abortion, but now this law moves it back. And I say law instead of bill because many of you know this, but many of you don't. A bill is called a bill until it's signed into law, and then it's a law. And so a bill you can stop, lobby, change, turn back, alter. A law is a law, and you have to take other steps to get rid of it or alter it or modify it. So it's now a law. It's a thing in America. It governs, or will govern as of January of next year, the very personal lives and decisions of the women of Georgia. And I would say of the men of Georgia too, because no one gets pregnant alone. So the left has also been saying, and many of the major media, I'm sorry to say, are really falling for this and not reading the bill, but that's what we're here for. It's stating things that are not true. For instance, and I just want to declare, as I always do, my personal bias, I'm pro-choice. But we're nonpartisan, and I have to tell you the truth about what's in the bill and tell you when people are lying about it. That's my job. So Business Insider states that women can get 30 years for having abortions. And many people are saying women can go to jail for having miscarriages. Slate says that they can go to prison for life. Glamour also states that women can go to prison for life under this law. And Alyssa Milano, the movie star, is launching a sex strike on Twitter in reaction to this law. The Week also claims that women can go to prison for life, and it's just not true. So the right is also saying things that are not true. National Review says that it doesn't criminalize miscarriage. That's, as we'll see, kind of technically true, but quite misleading. And other right-wing commentators have kind of steered clear of it because the details of it are so, incendiary on one side of the political divide, or I guess a great victory on the pro-life side of the divide. And they're kind of, the way I see the strategy of the pro-life movement, they're kind of letting the left work itself up into a frenzy on the basis of data that is not true, so that they can just go ahead and slide in there and make it the law of the land, and kind of let the left hoist themselves on their own petard, which is one of those great expressions that you may or may not know what it means. It means kind of to do yourself in, shoot yourself in the foot, which I'm nonpartisan, but the left is especially good at that. So that's the strategy that I see playing out as the right is kind of not really correcting all of these falsehoods about what the bill does. However, the bill really is extraordinarily radical. It is a big change wherever you sit on the spectrum of abortion law. And most people in America, the great majority, are right in the middle. They want it to be available under some conditions with some restrictions. But this isn't a bill that most people in the middle, the majority of America, is certainly not pro-choice people, would likely support if they knew the details of it. Most people statistically, and I'm trying to be super nonpartisan, I'm just saying statistically, most Americans want the relationship between a woman and her doctor to be private. This bill drastically intervenes, puts the state right in there between a woman and her doctor. And in fact, as we'll see, obtains her medical records, which is big, especially if you've got the Fourth Amendment, which gives you a level of privacy. And again, Roe v. Wade was also passed on the basis of the Fourth Amendment, which is the right to privacy, whether you agree with it or not. A lot of people don't agree with abortion, but do not think that the state has any right to obtain people's medical records. That's what HIPAA law is about, which protects your medical records. So this challenges that, as we'll see. So let's see what the bill does in advance of reading it. It's not that long, it's 19 pages. And as you know, I can zip through and highlight what's really critical. However, I do want to bullet point in advance what the bill actually does, so there's no mistake about it as we go through. So it really does, this will, wherever you are in the abortion debate, I think this will surprise you. This bill really does start out way at the top, making corporations people. It actually is a bill that doesn't just address fetuses, it totally addresses corporations and the personhood of corporations, and uses abortion law, which I think is very cynical, and uses the push to restrict abortions from people who really sincerely care about restricting abortions, right? Whether I agree with them or not, many of them are very sincere. It slides in protections for corporations under the guise of protecting fetuses. I'm going to say that again so you really get it. This bill very clearly, way up top, puts into law ironclad protections for the personhood of corporations under the guise of protecting fetuses. So you in our community know by now that a lot of bills, the reason we read them, they can be sneaky. They can be ostensibly about one thing, but really truly about something else. So you're right to ask yourself, why would Georgia pass a bill that is bound to or likely to be challenged, may even be overturned on appeal? It's going to lose them a bunch of money short term as liberals cancel contracts with the state of Georgia and boycott Georgia. Well, because what may survive the appeal is this gigantic protection for corporations and this assignment in the law of Georgia to corporations, the status of personhood. All right, so I'm getting some really great comments on the chat stream, and I'm going to address them, I promise, as soon as we get through the bill. So the other thing it does is it does make fetuses as young as 6 weeks, as I've mentioned, actionable, and that moves things way back. And it also really alters, if you think about it, the experience of women with their bodies. And I'm trying to be super neutral, but the bottom line is, whether you agree with abortion or not, whether you choose abortion or not, women really don't know within 6 weeks, a lot of times, if they're pregnant. I've been pregnant twice and I wasn't sure within 6 weeks of my pregnancy. Lots of women have, I'm just going to say it because we're talking about women's bodies in a legal context. Lots of women have irregular periods. Lots of women are often 2 weeks late with their periods and nothing's wrong, or they might even skip a period and they're not pregnant, or I should say it, and they're not pregnant. So this moves the window of anxiety, if you like, in the window of very serious decision making to very, very early. And I'm telling you, if I'm a woman in Georgia now, that 5th week after the end of my last period, I'm going to be completely freaked out if I'm a woman in Georgia of childbearing age, because all my decisions have to take place then. Everything has to happen then. Everything has to be mobilized then. And usually women have, even in that very sad circumstance in which they terminate a pregnancy, and to me it is always sad, usually they have time to be sure. And so this is what happens now. And so a lot of women are going to go, who are not pregnant, in a frenzy to their doctor's office in the 5th week after the ends of their periods. And a lot of women may even undergo procedures or make plans for the birth of a baby when they're not pregnant because they're 1 week late with their periods, or 8 days or 9 days late with their periods. So really think about that. And also, in a broader perspective, think about how intimately, whatever you think about abortion, the state is now getting in between you and literally your menstrual cycle. All right. Whatever you think about this, the state is now like standing by to act if you miss your period, even though nothing's wrong. Oh, happy Mother's Day to everyone. All right, even though you're not pregnant. Okay, and relationships, right? I mean, married couples, if they've had kids and they're just wanting to plan their family and mom is a week late, there are going to be some very, very serious discussions, serious decisions to be made, even in families that are just trying to contracept, right? Who ultimately won't choose abortion. It just moves the discussion way up, and it moves the false positives way, way up, because how many of us ladies have missed a period or been late and gone through that whole anxiety? You wait a few more weeks, find out you're not pregnant. Well, you won't have that cushion anymore. You'll need to act immediately, act with your husband, act with your boyfriend, act on your own, act with your girlfriend or wife. You will not have those extra few weeks to know what's even going on with your body. So support it or not, that's real with this bill. So it does, sit down for this. It does, I'm sorry, I need to turn off notifications. I apologize. It does make fetuses into human beings for tax purposes. So that might surprise you. And this is parallel to the way it enshrines, it monetizes and enshrines into law corporations and fetuses as legal entities in financial law, okay, in the tax code, in the criminal code, but it also is monetizing fetuses. It's basically saying you can claim them as a dependent. So that's one more layer of law, which is tax code law, this bill wraps around the personhood of the fetus. So when you're 6 weeks pregnant, you get to claim a dependent on your tax returns. Now, it does, as I've said, and to me, this is the most newsworthy and important thing about the bill, it does totally strip women of privacy in relation to their doctors if they might be pregnant. Happy Mother's Day, Charles. And see, I took your advice. And thank you so much for becoming a member and a member of our community. So it does hand over women's medical records basically to the state. It really does. And you'll see that when I read the bill. It does not allow a woman to terminate a severely impaired or disabled or damaged fetus that will not live or that endangers her life. It does not. She has to bring that to term, whether you agree or not. She has to do that. And it does severely, what it criminalizes is anyone who helps her, terminate. That's who it criminalizes. It doesn't say a woman will go to prison for her lifetime. It does put serious penalties, criminal penalties on anyone who helps her, medical professional, nurses, and it does force doctors, if a woman goes to seek a termination in the state of Georgia, it does force doctors to read a very rigorous and I think off-putting or informative script, depending on your point of view about abortion, in which it kind of explains what to that woman, what the nature of what the status of the fetus is. So we've just had 16 minutes to tell you what's in the bill, and now I'm going to zip through it. Okay, so everyone hold on to your hats. So first of all, the act may be cited, they say, as the Living Infants Fairness and Equality Act, the Life Act. So they don't, pull their punches. So the General Assembly of Georgia makes the following finding, and they cite the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. So they're starting with a sort of patriarchal flourish. So to protect the fundamental rights of all persons, and this is why the word person is so important, and specifically to protect the fundamental rights of certain classes of persons who had not previously been recognized under law, the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified, providing that, quote, nor shall any law deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So this is very clever and strategic. A lot of pro-life activists have been using the metaphor of slavery and the historical example of slavery to argue for the personhood of fetuses. So the 14th Amendment, as you all recall, it gave legal equality to slaves. So now they're invoking the 14th Amendment to say no person shall be deprived of life without due process of law. And then they have to go on, and this is the way laws are constructed, piece by piece, to define fetuses as a person. So now you know why this issue, person, is such a big deal, the 14th Amendment. Modern medical science, not available decades ago, demonstrates that unborn children are a class of living distinct persons. Well, that's arguable. And more expansive state recognition of unborn children as persons did not exist when Planned Parenthood v. Casey and Roe v. Wade established abortion-related procedures. The state of Georgia, applying reasoned judgment to the full body of modern medical science, recognizes the benefits of providing full legal recognition to an unborn child above the minimum requirements of federal law, meaning we're going beyond Roe v. Wade. And Article 1, Section 1, paragraphs 2 and 3 of the Constitution of the state of Georgia affirms that, quote, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, of property, except by due process of law, and that, quote, protection to person and property is the paramount duty of government and shall be impartial and complete. No person shall be denied the equal protection of law. And then finally, they wrap it up. Quid pro, quod erat demonstratum, it shall be the policy of the state of Georgia to recognize unborn children as natural persons. So even conservatives, even the National Review are kind of like, that's kind of a gigantic leap. That's a gigantic assertion to assert that unborn children, meaning fetuses in a woman's body, are natural persons. What is a natural person? That's a huge step beyond Roe v. Wade, and kind of a huge step beyond the 14th Amendment. You'd kind of have to add to the 14th Amendment the clause confirming that a fetus is a person. All right, so then they get right into it. Section 3, and who do they get into? Corporations. They've just established the sanctity of people and that the state's job is to protect people. So who are they protecting ahead of fetuses? Okay, on page 2. Section 3, corporations. Chapter 2, Title 1 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to persons and their rights is amended by revising the code 121 relating to classes of persons generally, corporations deemed artificial persons, and nature of corporations generally as follows. All right, so they're going right in and talking about corporations. I can't stress this enough. A, there are 2 classes of persons, natural and artificial. B, natural person means any human being, including an unknown child. And then they've added C, corporations are artificial persons. They are creatures of the law, and except insofar as the law forbids it, they are subject to be changed, modified, or destroyed at the will of their creator. So they're giving corporations more rights than they're giving women in relation to fetuses. They're saying you can't destroy a fetus, but you can destroy a corporation. D, unless otherwise provided by law, any natural person, including an unborn child, with a detectable human heartbeat shall be included in population-based determinations. So now they're saying, jumping from corporations to the census, that fetuses are also have to be included in the Georgia census and in the national census. So you have to count a pregnant woman as 2 human beings. And that's one more layer of the law wrapping itself around fetuses. And E, as used in this code section, the term 1, detectable human heartbeat, means embryonic or fetal cardiac activity or the steady and repetitive rhythmic contraction of the heart within the gestational sac. Whoa, this is getting right there into your uterus, ladies. I mean, agree or disagree, the state is going to listen in on the stethoscope, right? And listen to whether there's a heartbeat in the gestational sac before you have a fetus you might even know about. And 2, unborn child means a member of the species Homo sapien at any stage of development who is carried in the womb. So this actually opens the door for them to pass another bill or add a clause moving the date of criminalization right up to the minute after conception. All right, so the state is saying right up front, surprisingly, or maybe not, we're protecting corporations even before we protect fetuses with this bill. And second of all, the state gets to listen and evaluate and subpoena, presumably, those printouts from your stethoscope when you go in to check if you're really pregnant. At 1 week after you've missed your period, ladies, 1 week, 3 days after you've missed your period. All right, Section 4. Okay, Article 5 of the Official Code of Georgia relating to abortion is amended. So here I'm going to skip a bunch of stuff that's been struck out. And what they strike out here, you can see it because they interestingly leave the strikeouts, which is good. It's transparent. You can see that they struck out protections for abortions in the first trimester. They struck out the right to get an abortion in the first trimester done by a physician. And they've added new language as follows. It's a crime to, and this is what they've added, abortion means the act of using, prescribing, or administering any instrument, substance, device, or any other means with the purpose to terminate a pregnancy with knowledge that termination will, with reasonably likelihood, cause the death of an unborn child, provided, however, that any such act shall not be considered an abortion if the act is performed with the purpose of, all right, so here they say, we're not going to send all these people to jail if you're removing a dead stillborn fetus that has miscarried or removing an ectopic pregnancy. Well, okay, ladies, you get to have an ectopic pregnancy removed. You get to have a dead, you don't have to carry a stillborn fetus. I can't believe I'm having this conversation. To term, this law lets them clear it out of your body without being charged. 2, detectable human heartbeat means embryonic or fetal cardiac activity or the steady and repetitive rhythmic contraction of the heart within the gestational sac. So that repeats the language I mentioned before. And that really, as I said, goes to letting the state, really listen in and make sure that it's got a say on whether there's a steady rhythmic heartbeat. 19, medical emergency means a condition, and this is an exception, in which an abortion is necessary in order to prevent the death of a pregnant woman, or this is substantial and irreversible impairment of a major bodily function of the pregnant woman. So pay attention to that. It means that if you have gestational diabetes, or if your pelvis is too small to deliver without substantial injury to yourself, or if you are a hemophiliac, a bunch of circumstances in which you might not die, but you might be permanently injured or impaired, or you might have a minor bodily impairment, you can't get an abortion, right? So this does, I'm just going to say it, this does actually amp up significant risk to pregnant women of having to bear fetuses they might otherwise terminate at risk, at a number of possible risks to themselves. If the doctors all agree that it will kill you to bear the child, you can have an abortion. But if it's just going to impair a not major bodily function, like destroy your bladder or make you incontinent forever, those are the kinds of claims we're going to be seeing if this bill remains law. What's a major bodily function? Will you have to have a hysterectomy? Do you have a spina bifida? I have a spina bifida, and bearing a child will put you in a wheelchair, right? Is that a major bodily function? Those are the kinds of arguments lawyers are going to have. So you are no longer able to say, I don't want to risk being in a wheelchair. I don't want to terminate this fetus, but I can't risk being in a wheelchair. I have 2 other children. I can't afford the medical bills. You don't have that right anymore. All right. No such greater risk shall be deemed to exist if it is based on a diagnosis or claim of mental or emotional condition of the pregnant woman, or that the pregnant woman will purposefully engage in conduct in which she intends to result in her death or in substantial and irreversible physical impairment of a major bodily function. Wow. So, woo! So they're saying you still have to bear the child, even if your doctor says you're schizophrenic, or you're in a terrible mental state, or terribly dependent on drugs, and it will send you over the edge, or terribly depressed. You still have to have the baby, or if you kill yourself or impair yourself, you have still committed a crime. Medically futile means that in reasonable medical judgment, an unborn child has a profound and irremediable congenital or chromosomal anomaly that is incompatible with sustaining life after birth. And you can terminate in that circumstance. And finally, spontaneous abortion means naturally occurring death of an unborn child, including a miscarriage or stillbirth. Actually, let me reread that, because I'm mistaken. It actually means that the fetus cannot be terminated if it will die after death, and your assistants can go to prison if they assist you at a miscarriage. No abortion is authorized or shall be performed if the unborn child has been determined to have a detectable human heartbeat, except when, and they've struck, avert the death of the pregnant woman, or avert serious risk of substantial and irreversible physical impairment of a major bodily function. So pro-life movement, here it is, they've struck the option of a woman to terminate pregnancy if she's going to die, and they've supplanted it with, she can terminate if reasonable medical judgment that a medical emergency exists. You do have an exception if the pregnancy is the result of rape or incest, in which an official police report has been filed alleging the offense of rape or incest. As used in this paragraph, the term probable gestational age of the unborn child has the meaning provided by Code Section 31(9)(b). So if you're raped, or your father rapes you, and you're a minor, you have to go by yourself or with a friend or a parent to the police station and file a police report, even if you're a minor, in order to terminate this pregnancy as a result of rape or incest. And I have to say, honestly, I respect a lot of pro-lifers, but if it's a human life, it's a human life. And why is there a rape or incest exception? It seems weird and patriarchal, but we can debate that. A physician determines in reasonable medical judgment that the pregnancy is medically futile. You can have a termination. So you can have a termination in conducting an abortion if the child is capable of sustained life. Medical aid then available shall be rendered. So if the baby is terminated and yet is born, or the fetus is terminated and born, you can't let the fetus die, which I think most people would think is reasonable. Here's where abortions are not authorized. You can't authorize any abortion after the first trimester unless it's performed in a licensed hospital, licensed ambulatory surgical center, or in a health facility listed as an abortion facility by the Department of Community Health, only by a physician. And now, this is really serious. In the middle of page 5, very serious. Hospital or other licensed health activity records has been struck and replaced with health records. Health records, your health records, women of Georgia, shall be available to the district attorney of the judicial circuit in which the act of abortion occurs or the woman upon whom an abortion is performed resides. Your abortion goes to the DA. I can't stress this enough. It's on page 5 in the middle of the page. Women of Georgia, your abortion, your health records, which include your STD records, your alcoholism treatment records, your treatment for depression, all protected right now by HIPAA law, goes to the district attorney of the judicial circuit in which you live, the judge who determines crime in the area, in the town, in the neighborhood in which you live. So get that. Think about that. Absorb that, okay? Whether you support abortion or don't, you need to really know that the state is saying, we will read your healthcare records and we'll hand them to the DA who prosecutes crime. Nothing you do, none of your health records are truly private anymore between you and your doctor, unrelated to this abortion. All right, any woman upon whom an abortion is performed in violation of this code section may recover in a civil action who engages in such violation all damages available to her. So this is also very clever. It doesn't criminalize the woman, and this is where the left has really gotten it wrong. Glamour and Slate, they really did get it wrong. It means she can sue the doctor or Planned Parenthood who helped her, or the nurse. It can be an affirmative defense to prosecution if a licensed physician, so this is where they can't sue you, provides medical treatment to a pregnant woman which inadvertently kills an unborn child. And so this is protections that the medical profession is presumably lobbied for, because fetuses do die. It's a pretty high rate of fetal death. I wrote about this in Misconceptions for routine tests like the kind where they draw the syringe of fetal fluid. An advanced practice registered nurse, or registered professional nurse, or licensed practical nurse engages in practice of nursing to provide care which accidentally causes the death of a child, an unborn child. A licensed pharmacist provides care which results in the actual accidental or intentional injury and death of a child. So all these people are being exempted if they didn't intend to cause an abortion, but the fetus died. A licensed physician assistant in similar cases, or a woman sought an abortion because she reasonably believed that an abortion was the only way to prevent a medical emergency. So this is very contradictory. This is a weird law. A few pages back, they said a medical emergency won't let you have an abortion unless you're going to die. But this says, this is like a little whisper saying, well, you can still not be prosecuted if you went and got an abortion if you thought you were going to have a medical emergency as a result. All right, so this now relates to alimony and child support, and I'm going to skip ahead because the bottom line is this whole section on page 6 wraps more law around the fetus by calling the fetus a person for the purposes of family law and child support. And that's just kind of one more way to protect the fetus by saying, well, dads owe child support to the fetus. And it revises parent and child relationship by also putting a value on the loss to the parent of the life of the child. So it is another way to give parents of an unborn child the right to sue the doctor or Planned Parenthood, which terminates the life of the child, the way they would sue a drunk driver who runs their 5-year-old child over. Zipping along, there's a really interesting section here, and I hope you're all still engaged and paying attention. We're almost done. But here's a really interesting section on the next page, which basically amends the Woman's Right to Know Act. And it forces providers of abortions to tell women in person, not by phone, the risks, medical risks associated with the abortion procedure, the probable gestation age and presence of a detectable human heartbeat of the unborn child at the time the abortion will be performed, and the medical risks associated with carrying the fetus to term. So this, and then they're very specific about how it has to be done. It can't be a tape recording. It has to be during the consultation, face-to-face with the woman and her physician. And nothing in this code may be construed to preclude provision of required information in language understood by the patient through a translator. So if you're Vietnamese, you have to have a translator present to explain this in this script in Vietnamese. And so on. So this, a lot of people might say, is a violation of the doctor's First Amendment rights or the medical provider, because it's forcing them to read a script about risks, but not letting them kind of explain that they're being forced to read this script. And it does bias, understandably, women's decision-making by hearing about the risks of bringing a child to term or a fetus to term, depending on who you are, but not hearing any data about, for instance, how many women have terminations with no adverse effects. And a lot of doctors are just going to get out of the abortion provision business and Planned Parenthood in Georgia because so many ways to be sued by your patients, by the patient's dad, by any baby that so many ways to be sued. But also this does kind of force doctors to get into the business, and nurses and medical providers, of saying things to their patients that are not what are strictly reflective of that patient's actual medical risks and benefits to that patient of a procedure. And I say that knowing that benefits is kind of a cold-hearted term, but there are women to whom carrying a pregnancy to term is not in their medical best interest. And this doesn't allow the doctor to give them really objective information. Section 8, this makes for promotion and publication of the revision of what person and fetus and unborn child means on websites, in pamphlets. It's like a campaign to let everyone in Georgia know that by 20 weeks, unborn children seek to evade certain stimuli in a manner in which an infant adult would be interpreted to be a response to pain. And that anesthesia is routinely administered to unborn children who are 20 weeks gestational age or older who undergo prenatal surgery. So those things are true, but it's a campaign to focus everyone in Georgia on the fact that post 20 weeks, anesthesia is administered to fetuses for surgery, but also before 20 weeks, it's kind of very vague. We know that the fetuses, although they call this unborn children, seek to evade certain stimuli in a manner which in an infant or adult would be interpreted to be a response to pain. I always tell my writing students never to use the passive voice. That's passive voice. We really don't know. Nobody knows that a fetus at 6 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks is experiencing pain. But this is an inference, which is not supported by science. But this does provide for, and the people of Georgia really need to think, do they want their tax dollars, with everything that's going on right now, maybe they do, to be allocated to really a PR campaign, calling people's attention to the fact that fetuses react to stimuli in a certain way, and that anesthesia is applied after 20 weeks. Maybe it's the top priority with everything else going on in Georgia. Maybe it isn't, but the people of Georgia deserve to know. We're almost done. So then this is pretty serious. On page 8, if the except in the case of a medical emergency or when a pregnancy is diagnosed as medically futile, no abortion shall be performed or attempted to be performed unless the physician performing such procedure has first made a determination of the presence of a detectable human heartbeat. All right, so this is like, and you didn't used to have to do this. Even if you're sure you want to have an abortion, you have to hear that heartbeat, talk about that heartbeat, and devote resources to establishing that heartbeat. And if you don't comply with this, if you're a physician, in addition to any criminal or civil penalties provided by law, failure by any physician to conform to any requirement of this code section constitutes unprofessional conduct relating to medical licensing sanctions. Woo! So they're saying if there's any one thing you as a doctor do not do, if you don't read that script, if you don't, present that information about the heartbeat, if you let a woman come in and say she's sure she's going to have a medical emergency, and you decide the wrong way about whether it's a medical emergency, you can lose your license. That's unprofessional conduct. So it creates a whole area of gray for physicians, legally gray, with risk and exposure. And again, their lawyers and their insurance are going to say, don't even bother to offer this procedure, this service to your patients in Georgia, because it just raises your insurance premiums so much. It's so dangerous. You're facing a million lawsuits. Don't do it. And so even if someone wants to provide that service to his or her patients, he or she will turn that patient away, even if that person's been your OBGYN, for 15 years through 2 pregnancies and births. You are not going to get an abortion from your physician, no matter what, no matter how scared you are, how bad it is for your health, because it's too dangerous for him or her or them. Said chapter is further amended by the following. Relating to required reporting of physicians and departments, confidentiality and a failure to comply as follows. Any physician who performs or attempts to perform an abortion shall report to the department in conjunction with the reports required under Code Section 319A6 in accordance with forms and rules and regulations adopted and promulgated by the department. The probable gestational age, method, and basis of determination, and the determination that the pregnant woman had a medically futile pregnancy. It is all the ways you have to document if you're going to go ahead and give an abortion, the method used for the abortion. So you have to report to the DA all of those determinations about your patient. Then there's more about income taxes, ensuring that fetuses are dependents. And then it concludes that any citizen of the state shall have standing in the right to intervene and defend in any action challenging the constitutionality of any portion of this act. And all laws and parts of laws in conflict with this act are repealed. So everyone, that's HB 481 in Georgia. You guys are awesome. We did that in 44 minutes. You hung in there. And wow, there are some great questions. So those of you who just want to hear the bill read, we've read the bill. To recap, it does not send women to prison for 30 years or for life imprisonment for terminating a fetus. It really doesn't. But it does make it criminally actionable for doctors, nurses, Planned Parenthood to provide abortions. It does force them to document abortions to the district attorney. It does force your health records, if you're a woman in Georgia, to be sent to the district attorney, all of your health records. It doesn't just say just the record relating to your abortion. It does designate corporations as people. It does make fathers have to pay childcare support to fetuses, and it does take away your right as a woman to terminate a pregnancy in the event of a very serious medical risk to you in carrying it to term. And it does force doctors to read a script in which they stress the dangers to you of the termination. And finally, it's moved all of this criminalizing up to 1 and 2 weeks after you miss your last period. So I try to be super neutral there. A lot of people might think that's great. But I'd love to hear from pro-choice people, as well as, I meant to say, pro-life people, if this is the way they want to get rid of the high rate of abortions in this country. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'd love to hear from pro-life people as well. And most of all, I'd love to hear from the people of Georgia. So this has a bunch of sponsors. We'll put them in the bill cam, and when you use the bill cam of the actual bill, you can send it through social media. You can tweet the bill sponsors. You can tweet your rep. The most important thing, if you want to take action on this bill, is to contact friends in Georgia and to take action if you're a citizen of Georgia. As awesome as it is to have a bunch of people energized about a bill, at a state level, the people who pass this really don't care what anyone in any other state thinks about it, and there's some merit to that. They want to serve the people of Georgia. So you have a million times more power and influence if you are a Georgia constituent. And so if you're not, reach out to your friends in Georgia and get them acting on the bill cam. For or against. Let's see now. Now we're moving on to the Q&A. So thank you if you're signing off now and you don't want to join the Q&A. Please donate, subscribe, go to Patreon, make a gift. $30, $50, $10. We got a gift of $200. We got a gift of $300. Let's go crazy and give us a gift of $500. Or even if what you do is add a $10 gift a month to Daily Clout as part of your membership, which is an option, it really helps us to become self-sustaining, keep the research going, keep the data flowing, keep our hosting paid, fixed costs of $1,265 a month. And we're operating the red. We can operate in the black if you will help us get there. So please, please do, because right now there's a danger that we'll have to go offline. You've all been really stepping up, but if every time I broadcast, I can have 10 or 15 new members, will grow by leaps and bounds, especially if you give memberships to friends and recommend us, or go to Patreon and give us one-time gifts. All right. So lots of people are here. I welcome you. RP Gober, XX or on XX says, oh, wow. Danny Anson says 73 was flooded with population boom propaganda. And which is true. I remember that. And it's interesting that there's been such a 360-degree turn. We don't talk about population control anymore. And I have to say, I wonder why. I know there were racist things about it that should have been corrected, but generally making contraception available to women, people on the right or left and men often agree on. Danny Anson says something interesting. He says, the left invited the state into our families and damaged them, so why not? That's a totally interesting point of view. And it's kind of a tit for tat argument. So I think it merits a whole other conversation because I agree with you. There's a lot of truth there. The state did do that and always tends to go for state interventionist solutions in the private home. I guess the question is the answer that more state intervention from the right, or is it revisiting state intervention on the left and the right, and really reassessing if we want to maybe take back some control of our communities as volunteers and as community members, rather than having the state move in. But that's an interesting point. I'm not going to disagree with you. And Galen UNSTV says, hello, Naomi, happy Mother's Day, and happy Mother's Day to everybody. I know we've been slogging through a very serious subject, but I just want to share my total love for all of you out there and gratitude that so many people have supported our quest to make a more informed electorate here in the United States. And also we're going to start focusing on issues abroad. And I just want to say, go call your mom, hug your mom, send your mom a card. To me, cards and memories are more precious than things, but whatever you want to do. And don't just think about what it takes to be a good mom during Mother's Day. Think about it all the rest of the year. And I say this as a former single mother of two. It's a super hard job. It's the best job in the world, but we really all need everyone's support. And, seriously, next time you see a mom on a subway, stand up, give her your seat, right? Open the door for her if she's got a stroller. I mean, anything you need to do, help moms overseas not die of there's a whole riff, but everything you can do to make it easier for moms, do so, because that literally makes the world better, and she can use a hug. All right. It's rainmaking time. Hi, Kim, one of our biggest and most active supporters. So grateful you're here. Happy Mother's Day. Charles Pixley also, I told you how grateful I am you're here, Charles, and thank you for this great advice that I've acted on of the weekly at the same time event. Thank you for reviewing this. I showed up late. Glad to be here as always. Thank you so much, Kim of Rainmaking Time. Go check out her work as well. Jasper Bogue says, shocking. Good to see you, Jasper. And Kim says, this is so scary. My God, what are women going to do in Georgia? There needs to be a revolution. Women are nothing but vessels then, with no rights to their own body as a prima facie right, as a basic right. Can a state bypass the federal right to decline a pregnancy? Can the state bypass the federal right to decline a pregnancy? Well, that's really, truly, Kim, what's at issue with these bills. It's like, here's Roe v. Wade, and here are these state bills. Challenging. And this is why they're written so creatively. They're finding issues that Roe v. Wade doesn't cover, or avenues of constraint of access to abortion that Roe v. Wade doesn't cover. So Roe v. Wade doesn't cover the tax law, for instance, and Roe v. Wade doesn't cover suing your doctor. So they're passing these bills that don't contradict Roe v. Wade, but in practice hollow out your ability to make use of the rights that have been guaranteed under Roe v. Wade. And we'll see. The real question is, when there's an appeal, what will the judge rule? Will the judge rule that this contradicts the law of the land, it's unlawful, and therefore overturn it? And they are expecting an appeal, of course. The ACLU has interestingly been very active with overturning these abortion laws. I have mixed feelings about that, but we'll keep an eye on this if you all want us to. We're starting to take your comments and preferences into account for what we cover and follow up on. So if you want us to keep an eye on this abortion bill and others like it, because there are others that have been introduced just like it, send an email to me, naomi@dailyclout.io. And if you sign up as a member, I'll send you a survey where you can write in what you want us to cover and keep an eye on. So you get to direct the coverage. Jasper Bowe says 1984, tripping, so-called elite, kind of 1984 from many people's perspective. Let's see. Chris St. Price says, is there such thing, it's a good question, as patients signing a release when getting an abortion to minimize or eliminate the legal risk for that provider? That's a great and well-informed question. And I'm sure that if doctors and providers in Georgia are going to continue to provide some level of termination of pregnancies, their lawyers will insist that they do get releases such as those signed. And I think the lawyers would say, I'm not a lawyer, that it provides a level of protection in that particular case with that particular client. But, there are also so many ways for people later to say, and you're going to see people being encouraged to do this because there's a lot of funding of these cases kind of behind the scenes. I didn't know what I was signing. I don't speak English. I was coerced. So there might even be a test case about that. So I think even though nominally it provides some protection, I think lawyers are also going to be warning doctors that the protections can be challenged, even from a release. And Stay Strong, says Jasper. Thank you, Jasper. I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. This is JP and Julie. Thank you. Please reiterate whether this is the 20-week law that's been amended to 6 weeks. It is. It is a law. Or if this is just a proposed bill from the beginning. I'm sharing this and want it right. Honey, I'm glad to see you, and I really appreciate your support as well. These are our core founders, our founding members. JP and Julie, if you go back to the beginning, you'll hear that this is actually a law. It actually got passed. It was signed into law by Governor Brian Kemp, and it does move everything back from 20 weeks, and it struck those paragraphs. You can see it struck when we embed the law in the text below this video, and moves it back to 6 weeks. So this is a done deal in Georgia. It starts in January of next year. It starts, it's law. They're just waiting to roll it out in January of next year, unless it is overturned on appeal. Barry Atkinson, hi Barry, happy Mother's Day. Barry says, anyone think the unthinkable? Unwanted pregnancies become words of the state, a 21st century slavery, I hope not. Barry, that is absolutely not unthinkable. You're thinking in the right direction. This is absolutely the state, and I'm not being alarmist, and I'm not even being pro-choicist. I'm just reading the bill as it's literally written, actually the law. This law categorically says fetuses are persons, fetuses are unborn children are persons. All right, persons have all kinds of rights under Georgia state law or any state law, and the state also has all kinds of responsibilities for them. So absolutely the next step is to take pregnant women into custody. There's no question, because this obligates the state to protect the fetus if the mother is a drug addict, if the mother is going to insist on terminating in the event because her health won't support a pregnancy in her view. Many circumstances, this categorically lays the legal foundation for the state to say, it's a person. Look, you passed this law. This law says it's a person. We have to protect this person. We're obligated by our Constitution, which is true. And so we have to take this woman into custody, state custody, and take the fetus into custody. And it's a ward of the state. No question. Wow, yes. Okay, thank you. So it's been 57 minutes. You guys are completely awesome. I love you so much. Happy Mother's Day. I mean, some of you have heard the bill. Eileen, hi, Eileen. Really, truly our founding members. Hello from Flint, Michigan. I'm so happy to see you, Eileen. Thank you all. I kind of want to cheer those of you who are pro-choice up, and greet those of you who are pro-life, and give some resolution here. So you're not happy Mother's Day, Carolyn. All my friends. I don't want anyone to feel like this is the end of the conversation, okay? If this is a bill that you like, a law that you like, well, you've done it. You've made Georgia that place. And, you will hear from your fellow citizens. And maybe you have won this battle, and it has effectively, if you're pro-life, from your point of view, saved a lot of fetuses, because it will be very, very difficult to get an abortion in Georgia if this law remains. So I'd love to hear what Feminists for Life has to say about the methodology of this. And I'm trying to be super neutral. If you are pro-choice, you should know that you're being misinformed about some of the scare tactics of people reporting in the bill. It's not going to send women to prison. That would be politically unpopular, right? It actually, what it does is much, much sneakier. And you've seen what it does. So to a lot of people, the state claiming the fetus, your medical records, the fetal heartbeat, that's gonna be scary to people on the left and the right who are in any way libertarian, and in the center, who may not like abortion, may want there to be fewer abortions. But don't think the state should see their medical records and that their doctor should report to the district attorney about, their herpes contracted through an extramarital affair or other things they might not want the state to know about. And they might not want the state to become wards of their wife's fetus in the event that their wife someday has a medical issue or a financial issue that might lead her to seek a termination. So it gives us a lot to think about, but on a really happy note, to send you out almost at an hour into your Mother's Day, this is still a democracy, and one side has really moved the goalposts with very, very powerful impacts on everyone's lives in Georgia. And that's not the end of the story in a democracy. That would be the end of the story if we really lost democracy, if the other side doesn't like it, or if the middle doesn't like it, or if even people who thought they liked the bill have now heard it and don't like all of it, but like parts of it. You have the power to make the change, to have the debate, to lobby. You have the power through Daily Clout and through BillCam to send this bill to the bill sponsors and say, you know what, I like paragraph 5, but I hate paragraph 12, or, cut the part about handing over my medical records, or, push it back to 20 weeks. There are things you can say about this. And if you love the bill, be prepared to hear from your fellow citizens and have a strong, effective debate where you're explaining why this is a good law, why it should stand. Judges, we have a 3-part system, are going to have a say about this bill if it's brought to appeal. So I just want to end by saying we've had a really serious conversation on this Mother's Day with deep, deep issues being illuminated in this bill, profound. But let's go out on Mother's Day kind of joining hands, believe it or not, in a bipartisan way, loving each other, hoping for each other, not giving in to hate and name calling. These are serious issues, but we live in a democracy. We're cherishing our democracy. We can lobby and persuade our fellow citizens. We can form new alliances. We can oust our elected representatives and bring in new ones. So we all have to take responsibility for that to happen, not be passive. So share the bill cam, lobby for or against the bill, read the bill, right? I read it to you, read it for yourself. Don't take my word for it, just like you shouldn't take anyone else's word for it. And tweet the bill sponsors, tweet the rep, become a member of Daily Clout. If you want to pass another bill in Georgia, join us as a member, because we're going to offer a new service where people can crowdsource legislation and hire lawyers to review it. If you want to inform everybody outside of Georgia what's going on, use the bill cam. Let your own representatives know how they feel about this bill, and we'll keep an eye on it. But support us, because you are leading the dialogue to have all the laws of this land reflect what the people of this land and their voices want to bring about. So that's me. The bill is HB 481. This is Daily Clout. Use your bill cam, subscribe, become members, send us gifts. You can sponsor a bill. You can, we're giving out copies of The End of America and Give Me Liberty. I'll subscribe to your loved ones, inscribe to your loved ones for other premiums on Patreon. And please become part of our community. Sunlight and debate is the way forward. Have a wonderful, wonderful Mother's Day, everyone, and a big, big hug from me personally as a mom to all the moms out there, not just in the United States, but all over the world. You are doing the most, anyone who nurtures a child is doing the most important work on earth. So happy, happy Mother's Day, everybody. Take care. See you next week.